Welcome back, and in this fundamentals lesson I want to quickly cover a topic which you'll use constantly within the course and in the real world, and that's multi-factor authentication, known as MFA. Now we have a fair amount of theory to cover, so let's just jump in and get started. Now before I talk about the way that multi-factor authentication is implemented within AWS, let's just refresh our knowledge on exactly why MFA is needed. So consider for a moment the way that you usually log in to any web-based applications. Generally, you use usernames and passwords, and if both of these are leaked, then anyone can be you. Anyone can take your username and password and use them to log into an application and impersonate you as an identity. So what we need is a way to improve this. So there's another term which I want to introduce, and that term is known as a factor or factors. So factors are pieces of evidence which prove identity, and there are different types of factors. So when you hear the term single factor authentication, this means to use just one of these types or one of these types of factors. Multi-factor authentication is when you use multiple factors or multiple types of factors to log in to an application. Now there are four common factors that you'll use to log in to any web application. First is knowledge, and this is something that you know. So the knowledge factor includes usernames and passwords. The second type of factor is possession, and this is something that you have, so a bank card or an MFA device or an MFA application. So consider what you do when you use a bank card at an ATM. You have to have the bank card, you put it inside the ATM, and then you need to enter a PIN. So this is an example of multi-factor authentication. In this case, you're using two factors, something that you have, the bank card, and something that you know, your PIN. The next factor is inherent, so this is something that you are, so a fingerprint, a face scan, voice identification, or an iris scan. These are all examples of the inherent factor. And then lastly we have location, so this can be either a physical location, so a particular set of coordinates anywhere in the world, or it can be the type of network that you're currently logged into to access a system, so whether you're logged into the corporate network or using your home Wi-Fi network. Various different security procedures might require a certain location, which is a factor to use as part of an authentication process. So in general, the more factors that your authentication process uses, this means more security, and it also means that it's harder to fake your identity. So imagine if you could only log into a system using something that you know, so username and password, something that you have, so a security card or an MFA device or application. Imagine if you also needed a fingerprint or a facial scan, and you could only log in within the confines of your corporate network. That would mean a really secure login process, but it would mean it's not very convenient. So generally we're trying to achieve a balance between convenience and security. Now at this point I want to show you the specific process of how multi-factor authentication is implemented within AWS. So we're going to step through the process of exactly how AWS handles the addition of a second factor. So this is an MFA device or an MFA application. So we start with an AWS account, and by default you log into this with a username and password. These are both things that you know. So this is known as single factor or one factor authentication. Now the issue, as I touched upon previously, is that if both of these leak, either because of an error on your part or because of malware on the machine that you're using to log in, then a bad actor can fake your identity and log in as you. Now we improve this by using MFA. As a reminder, this stands for multi-factor authentication, and MFA can be activated using a physical MFA device, which is a key fob style device which generates ever-changing codes, or you can use a virtual MFA device which is added to an MFA application such as Google Authenticator, and these applications run on a phone or other device and can store lots of virtual MFAs, and this means that they can be used for lots of different services and lots of different accounts within those services. Now to configure MFA within AWS for a specific identity, let's say the account root user, you activate MFA MFA for that user. And when you do so, AWS generates a secret key, which is a randomly generated key, and it also generates other associated information, such as the username it links to and the name of the service. This information needs to be eventually entered into an MFA application such as Google Authenticator, and to make this easier, AWS use all of this information together, so the secret key and the additional information, to generate a QR code, and this QR code encodes all of this information in a visual pattern. So once you've got this QR code, using the MFA application on your phone, you scan this code which transfers the information into the MFA application, and this means there's now an entry in the application with a code which regenerates periodically. It's never the same, and new code is generated every single time the code refreshes. Now, the way to think about the application is that it holds one or more virtual MFAs, and each virtual MFA, as the name suggests, is an MFA device, only virtual. So if you have 2 users within AWS, then you would generally have 2 virtual MFAs, and you can have, within sensible limits, as many of these as you want within your MFA application, all representing identities in various services such as AWS, Google Mail, Azure, GCP, or any other cloud environments or web applications. Now, once you have the MFA configured, the next time you log into AWS, as well as being required to enter the username and password for the specific user that you're using, you'll also be prompted to enter the MFA code showing for that one specific virtual MFA within your Authenticator application. It needs to be the current code for the correct virtual MFA on your specific Authenticator application on your phone or other device. This means, in addition to the username and password, which are both things that you know, so this means single-factor authentication, you now need to provide something that you have, and this means your identity inside AWS is secured using multi-factor authentication. Even if your username and password were leaked, in order to log into AWS, that's only possible if you provide the MFA code as well. If you lose your MFA device, even though a bad actor has that device and has that MFA code, login would only be possible if they also know your username and password. You need all 3. And in general, on most modern phones, the MFA application itself will also be protected with multi-factor authentication. So generally, you'd need to have first logged into the device using a PIN code, and then potentially needing a fingerprint scan or a facial scan in order to gain access to your MFA application. So this is a really effective way of adding additional security to any of your web applications, including AWS. Now, this is everything I wanted to cover in this lesson. This is a feature that you're going to be using constantly in any of my courses and if you use AWS in the real world. But with that being said, go ahead and complete this video, and when you're ready, I'll look forward to you joining me in the next.